The Lost Settlement of Blackwood Hollow. In the winter of 1691, 23 settlers vanished from a place that wasn't supposed to exist, and for 300 years no one could explain why their footprints stopped all at once at the edge of a frozen creek. Chapter 1. The Arrival. The ship Red Heart arrived on the Carolina coast beneath a sky like iron. Frost clung to the reeds, the marshes were stiff with ice, and the woods beyond looked endless, a sea of black pine rising into gray mist. 23 settlers, half-starved and sick from the Atlantic crossing, stumbled ashore that day to claim a new beginning. Their leader, Captain Elias Blackwood, was a man driven by failure. He'd led one colony before, farther north, washed away by storms and fever. But this time, he swore, would be different. The land owes us something, he told his people, and we will take it. They called their new home Blackwood Hollow, after the ring of tall, dark pines that surrounded their clearing. It was 15 miles inland from the sea, safe from coastal floods, yet close enough to the river for trade. The soil was rich, the creek ran clear, and the silence was absolute. But not empty. The first to vanish was Henry Dawes, a carpenter. 3 days after arrival, he went to cut timber near the creek and never came back. His axe was found stuck in a tree stump, one clean swing embedded deep, as though he'd stopped mid-strike and walked away. His footprints ended at the water's edge. Captain Blackwood said he drowned, but the others whispered otherwise. At night, when the mist rolled in from the marsh, they claimed they heard voices, low hums, far away, like something calling through the trees. Some saw movement beyond the palisade, tall shadows that bent where no man could bend. The Weepameoc people, who lived north along the river, had warned them in their brief meeting. "Do not build near the hollow river," said an elder through a trader's tongue. "The old ones sleep there." Blackwood laughed it off. "Old ones mean spirits," he told his men, "and spirits fear God and musket shot alike." But the journal of Thomas Greer, the colony's scribe, painted a darker picture. December 9th, 1691. There is a stillness here that chills the blood. The forest is not merely silent, it listens. The children speak of whispers in their sleep, and last night, beneath the frozen earth, we heard knocking as though something wished to be let out. Despite the unease, they worked hard. Within 2 weeks, they raised a rough palisade of logs, 6 small cabins, and a common hall. On Christmas Eve, Reverend Milton held the first service under flickering candlelight. Here we begin anew, under God's eye. But that night, a little girl named Mary Tolland screamed in her sleep. She pointed at her window, sobbing that a tall man stood among the trees, smiling. Her father found footprints in the snow outside, barefoot, large, and not human. The next morning, they found more prints inside the palisade. That was when the knocking began. It came from the frozen ground near the well, faint, rhythmic, patient. Some thought it was trapped air or roots shifting. They dug to investigate, but the deeper they went, the colder the earth became. Then their shovels struck something hollow, like wood or a door. Reverend Milton ordered them to stop. "If it is God's will that we not find it, we will not force his hand." That night, Greer wrote again. "The well water tastes of iron and old blood, yet Captain insists we drink of it, for there is no other. At dusk, the sound beneath grows stronger." By January, the sickness had begun. Men grew feverish but did not sweat. They spoke in their sleep, saying words none could understand. Blackwood said it was hunger. The Reverend said it was sin. Yet both began locking their doors at night. On January 27th, a boy found something carved in the inside of the wall. Leave before spring. The letters were backward, gouged deep from inside the wood itself. Blackwood burned that section of the wall and forbade anyone to speak of it. Fear makes fools of men, he said, but his hands trembled when he spoke. Then when the thaw came, they found Henry Dawes's axe again, polished clean, leaning beside the well as if placed there. That night, the dreams began. Every colonist saw the same vision, a red moon over the forest, the pines bending like fingers, and beneath them, a black pit filled with whispering faces. In their dreams, something waited below, murmuring in the old tongue of the woods. Some said they saw Captain Blackwood lowering a bucket into the well, smiling as he whispered to whatever answered from the dark. Thomas Greer's final entry for that month read, "I do not think we built this place. I think it built itself." And by spring, the forest would take them all. Part 2. The Whispering Ground. When spring came to Blackwood Hollow, the snow melted not into mud, but into silence. The woods awoke slowly, creaking, breathing. If you stood by the creek at dawn, you could hear it, the groan of thawing roots, the soft rush of mist through pine, and beneath that, a pulse, steady as a heartbeat in the earth. The settlers should have rejoiced. The ice was gone, the soil turned soft and dark, yet every seed they planted blackened in the ground, as if burned from below. The cattle refused to graze. Even the dogs lay with their faces hidden, whining at nothing. And the dream returned to all of them. Thomas Greer recorded it. April 3rd, 1692. Each night the same vision, a red moon, a hollow in the trees, and whispering beneath the soil. The sound grows clearer. It comes from the well. Captain Elias Blackwood would not speak of curses. He blamed the sickness on bad water and ordered new wells dug. The men worked until their palms bled, every hole filled with the same bitter water that tasted of metal. Then one morning, the first well, which they had sealed with stones, stood half full again, cold, clear, faintly trembling. When they dipped a bucket, the handle vibrated as if some note hummed through it. No one drank after that. The Reverend doubled his prayers. Twice a day the colonists gathered in the smoky hall, clutching pine twig crosses, whispering scripture through chattering teeth. But the forest outside only listened. At night, words rose between the trees. Not wind, not animal, speech, heavy and wet, syllables older than English. Then, one gray morning, Mary Tolland was gone. Her mother found a line of small handprints in the soot beside the hearth, leading to the door. The latch was still closed from inside. Captain Blackwood led a search through the forest. The air smelled of thaw and rot. Near the creek they found Mary's ribbon snagged on a branch, still fluttering though the woods were windless. Deeper in, Greer stopped suddenly. "Listen," he whispered. From the ground came a murmur, not beneath their feet, but inside it, as if the soil itself whispered through water. The words meant nothing, yet carried with them intent. Reverend Milton fell to his knees, praying until his voice broke. Blackwood barked an order to return. They fled the woods without speaking. That night, none of them slept. By May, the fever spread. Men wandered in their sleep, eyes open, mouths moving. One was found at dawn standing in the creek, whispering to his reflection. When they pulled him out, his skin was ice cold, though the morning was warm. He lived long enough to say 3 words. It calls deeper. Greer wrote shakily. The sound travels through roots and wells. We dug into something that wishes to remain buried. The Reverend doubled his prayers. He burnt herbs, hung pine crosses on the gates, and read from Job until dusk. That night, the whispers stopped. For the first time in months, silence filled the hollow. They slept. At dawn, Reverend Milton was gone. His Bible lay open on the altar, a single word written in ash across the page. The letters were backward, carved as though seen in a mirror. Even Blackwood now drank rum meant for trade, muttering that rescue would come. But no ship appeared, and the path to the coast had vanished under new growth, as if the forest had swallowed the road whole. Then, in early June, lightning struck the meeting hall, setting the roof aflame. The settlers ran with buckets and froze. From the well came knocking. Soft, patient, steady. The fire went out on its own. Days later, strange ripples spread across the well's surface, though the air was still. At night, someone saw pale hands moving just below the water. They sealed the well with boards and stones, poured pitch over the cracks. By morning, the boards had shifted outward, stones rolled aside. For 3 days, Greer's journal was blank. When he wrote again, his script shook across the page. It spoke. It used my name. It told me there were bones beneath the trees, bones older than any tribe. The captain listens now. He kneels by the well and whispers back. He says it promises deliverance. By midsummer, the hollow stank of death. The creek frothed with dead fish. No birds returned. Then John Pike, the blacksmith, vanished. His hammer lay by the gate. The iron twisted as if melted in his hands. The colonists begged Blackwood to flee. We'll find another settlement, they pleaded. He slammed his musket to the table. This is my land. No spirit will drive me out. That night, the wind rose from the well, not upward, but outward, like a breath turned loose. The torches died. The air grew colder than winter. From within the walls came the whisper again, closer now, sliding through every crack in the wood. It spoke one word: stay.
Part 3. The Night of Ashes. By July, the hollow had changed. What once sounded like life, the creak of branches, the chirr of insects, had gone still. The forest no longer moved with the wind. It waited. You could feel it in your skin, the air so heavy it pressed against the lungs. The settlers barely spoke now, faces hollow, eyes sunken. The smell of rot drifted even in daylight, and no one knew where it came from. The creek ran dark and slow. Some said it wasn't water anymore, but something thicker, something that reflected shadows that weren't there. Captain Elias Blackwood spent his days by the well. He'd dismissed prayers and forbidden the Reverend's rituals. Faith makes cowards, he'd said once. But now, the others saw him murmur into the well's mouth, his voice low, his eyes vacant. Thomas Greer kept writing, though his hands shook. The captain speaks to it as a man might to God. He says it answers. He says it knows the old paths under the earth. I fear what he listens to. In the middle of that sweltering July, the forest caught fire, but not from lightning and not from flame. It began as light. A dull red glow deep between the trees. The settlers saw it from the palisade, a pulse, faint and rhythmic, as though the forest themselves were breathing in embers. Then came the hum, low, deep, a tone that shook the ribs. The dogs howled and fled beneath the cabins. The livestock screamed. The settlers gathered in the square, clutching torches and muskets, watching the tree line shimmer red. Blackwood stood still, listening. When Greer asked what he heard, the captain smiled faintly. "The land is opening," he said. Then he walked toward the forest. They followed with lanterns, calling his name. The light pulsed stronger, staining the fog crimson. The trees dripped sap that gleamed like blood. The ground underfoot trembled as if hollow. And then they saw it. A pit in the earth where none had been before. Perfectly round, smooth-sided, wide as a ship's hull. The glow came from within it. Not fire, not coal, but something alive. Blackwood stood at the edge. "Do you hear them?" he whispered. The settlers said no. But then the sound rose, a choir of whispers, dozens, hundreds, weaving in and out of each other like wind through reeds. It wasn't words, not exactly, but intent. Hunger. Greer tried to pull him back. Blackwood turned, his face pale in the red light. "They remember us," he said. And before anyone could move, he stepped into the pit. The light went out. They found no trace of him the next morning, only a patch of scorched soil, the grass around it blackened to ash. The settlers buried an empty coffin behind the hall. Reverend Milton's Bible lay on it, its pages still open to the word remember. But there was no prayer left in any of them. The nights grew longer. The air carried the smell of iron and smoke. Sometimes the settlers woke to find ash drifting from the rafters, though no fire burned. Other times, they'd hear footsteps outside, slow and heavy, pacing the palisade. One night, Greer looked through a crack in the wall and saw them. Figures in the dark, pale as bone, standing between the trees. Not people. Not exactly. Their faces were smooth, unfinished, as if carved from the same earth they rose from. They watched, but did not move. He didn't tell the others until morning. By then, 2 more colonists were gone. The fear that followed had no sound, no screams, no panic, just exhaustion. They stopped working the fields, stopped speaking above a whisper. Some refused to sleep indoors, choosing to sit in circles around dying fires, staring toward the woods. Others simply walked away at dusk and never returned. By the end of July, only 9 remained. The well, once sealed with pitch and stone, now stood open again. The boards lay scattered, the rope coiled neatly beside it, as though someone had drawn from it in the night. Greer wrote by candlelight. "The air feels heavy as grave soil. The others say they hear knocking beneath the floorboards. I know it comes from below the hollow. The well is not a well, it is a mouth." He begged the survivors to flee. Most refused. "Where would we go?" they said. "The forest doesn't end." They were right. On August 2nd, the final storm came. Black clouds gathered over the hollow without warning. Wind tore the palisade apart. Thunder rolled like cannon fire, and a voice, vast, unhuman, seemed to echo beneath it all. It wasn't words, not at first. Then faintly, "Stay." Lightning struck the hall again. This time it did not go out. Flames spread fast, feeding on dry timber, on tar, on fear. The settlers tried to flee, but the ground split near the well, wide and black. Greer saw the faces again, pale, eyeless, rising from smoke and ash, hands reaching upward as if to pull the living down. He ran toward the forest, pages of his journal clutched in his coat. Behind him, the hollow burned. The screams faded one by one, until only the wind remained. And when he looked back, there was no settlement, only blackened earth and a ring of trees untouched by fire. Weeks later, a small party from the Roanoke outpost arrived. They found no bodies, no signs of struggle, only ash scattered in a circle.
Part 4. The Last Journal. History remembers what men try to forget. Roanoke Surveyor's Report, 1693. The Roanoke search party arrived at Blackwood Hollow 2 years after the first settlers vanished. They were a small group of men, equipped with axes, rifles, and a single scribe, Jonathan Hale, tasked with documenting the recovery. They expected burned cabins, scattered tools, and perhaps a few bones. What they found was far stranger. The palisade was mostly intact, though charred in parts. The well stood open, dark and unmoving, as if daring them to peer inside. No bodies were found, and no signs of struggle remained, only the ashen ring marking where the hall had once stood. Hale knelt beside the well, scribbling notes. There's no scent of decay, yet the air feels wrong, heavy, almost metallic. One of the men, a young recruit named Silas, shivered. It's too quiet. The forest itself seems waiting. Hale nodded, uneasy. He began examining the remnants of the settlement. A few scattered journals survived, most pages burned or illegible. Only one remained in surprisingly good condition, Thomas Greer's last account. The hollow is awake. It does not lose what it takes. The captain is gone. They rise from below. Do not follow. Leave before it remembers you. The handwriting was frantic, letters uneven, as though Greer had written in haste or terror. Hale felt a chill descend. They, he muttered. What could he have meant? The group explored cautiously. They dug near the foundations of the cabins. Every shovel strike met resistance. Not rocks, but roots. Roots that seemed too thick, too dark, too unnatural. Some men swore they felt a tug beneath the earth, as though the hollow itself resisted intrusion. Hale opened the last pages of the journal. There was a crude map of the settlement, including an unmarked path extending beyond the forest. Beside it, a note. The path leads to the old colonies, those who vanished before us. They sleep beneath the soil. They wait. The men exchanged uneasy glances. They heard of the Roanoke disappearances, of Jamestown's struggles, but nothing spoke of forests that devoured entire settlements. That night, Hale kept watch alone. He made a fire in the center of the hollow, lanterns surrounding it, trying to feel safe. The wind shifted suddenly, and the low hum rose from the well. He froze. The bucket moved slightly, though the rope was untouched. The knocking began. 3 slow, deliberate beats. Hale gripped his musket. Shadows flickered in the firelight, long, thin shapes moving between the trees. Faces formed in the smoke, pale, eyeless, expressionless. He could not tell if they were alive or remnants of memory. He wrote in his journal by trembling candlelight, "It is not the dead that linger. It is something older, something patient. It calls, it remembers, and it waits for those foolish enough to stay." The next morning, Hale and the others tried to follow the path Greer had sketched. The forest thickened immediately, branches twisting like hands. Roots snaked along the ground as if alive, tangling boots and tearing at hems. Several men fell, crying out. When Hale helped them up, he noticed footprints in the mud, large, irregular, human yet wrong. "This is the same forest where the settlers disappeared. It hasn't let them go," Hale murmured. The path ended at a clearing, unlike any natural space Hale had seen. The soil here was dark and soft, sunken in the center. Charred remnants of old cabins from decades earlier, perhaps from failed colonies, were buried partially under the moss. Hale felt an almost magnetic pull toward the center. He knelt and ran his hand over the earth. Cold, wet. The hum rose, vibrating through his chest. Then, faintly, whispers, words half-formed, in no language he recognized, crawling into his mind. "Remember, remember, remember." He stumbled backward, heart racing. The other men were pale, silent. One whispered, "It's awake, just like Greer wrote." Hale realized then the terrible truth. Blackwood Hollow was not merely a settlement site. It was a convergence point. Below it lay the buried remnants of lost colonies, Roanoke, and perhaps others even older from before recorded history. The hollow remembered them, and in remembering, it hungrily reached out. It fed on those who trespassed, adding their memory to its own. They tried to leave. The forest twisted, paths vanishing, trees bending subtly, guiding them back. One man screamed, vanishing between two trunks. Hale saw him no more. By the third day, only Hale and two others remained. The hollow seemed to pulse with quiet laughter, the hum rising into a crescendo. The well water now rippled despite still air. Hale's heart pounded as he wrote, "This place is alive. It is older than men." Part 5. Echoes Through Time. Nearly 2 centuries passed after the Roanoke survey party returned from Blackwood Hollow. By then, the colonial landscape had shifted. New settlements thrived along the coast, and the memory of vanished colonies had become legend, whispered around hearths. Yet Blackwood Hollow remained, a scar of forest, untouched by plow or fire, its dark soil hiding stories no map recorded. In 1889, a team of historians and amateur archaeologists, led by Dr. Samuel Whitaker, decided to investigate the hollow. Whitaker was fascinated by lost colonial settlements, particularly those vanished without trace. Among his team were surveyors, botanists, and a young man, Elijah Moore, who had an uneasy fascination with tales of the supernatural. When they arrived, the forest was alive in a way that townsfolk did not describe. Trees rose like cathedral columns, thick moss hanging in the air. The well, still standing at the center of the clearing, looked ancient yet perfectly preserved. Whitaker paused at the edge, noting the precise alignment of the stones and the deep circular pit recorded in earlier journals. "Remarkable," he whispered. "It has resisted time." Elijah knelt, peering into the well. The water was black and still, reflecting the surrounding trees. As he leaned closer, he thought he heard something, a faint tapping, 3 slow knocks echoing from the depths. He straightened suddenly, I don't like this, he muttered. Whitaker smiled reassuringly. It's an old well, nothing more. Yet none of them could deny the feeling in the air. Heavy, expectant, almost sentient. The team began excavating near the remnants of the burned cabins. Every shovel strike revealed soil unlike any they had encountered. It was soft, almost pulpy, and smelled faintly metallic, like iron and ash mixed. Strange roots ran through it, thick and dark, some curling around stones in unnatural patterns. Elijah noted a hollow depression beneath one of the cabin foundations. As he brushed the soil away, he found fragments of burnt wood, parchment, and human bones. Small, almost fragile, their edges polished, as if carried by water for decades. "Good God," one of the surveyors whispered. "These must be the settlers, or worse." Whitaker examined the fragments. Not just Blackwood Hollow. Look at the pattern. These remains align with the other vanished colonies along the coast, Roanoke, Jamestown. Perhaps the hollow was a repository of lost memory. That night, as they camped near the edge of the clearing, Elijah could not sleep. The wind rose suddenly, rustling the moss like whispers brushing his face. He heard soft footsteps in the forest, slow and deliberate. Lanterns flickered, shadows stretching unnaturally. Then came the sound, unmistakable, echoing from below the well. 3 slow knocks. He froze. The sound was deliberate, patient, and not entirely of this world. Whitaker stirred beside him. "Elijah, what is it?" I think it's the hollow. It's calling," he whispered. No one slept that night. The following morning, Whitaker decided to examine the well more closely. They lowered a lantern on a rope, but when it hit the water, the reflection twisted unnaturally. Shapes seemed to rise beneath the surface, pale, eyeless faces reaching upward. Elijah staggered back. It's alive," he stammered. "It remembers them. It remembers Blackwood, the settlers, everyone it has ever claimed." Whitaker took careful notes, recording what he called visual phenomena in the water. He insisted there was a natural explanation: refraction, shadows, moss. Yet even he felt the heavy pulse beneath the earth, a rhythm he could not account for. That night, the hollow whispered again, not just tapping from the well, but voices, overlapping, murmuring names in a language no one understood. The sounds pressed against the mind, carrying intent, memory, and warning. Elijah wrote feverishly in his journal, "It is not just soil, not just roots. Blackwood Hollow is a repository, a consciousness built from all who vanished. It waits, it watches, and it will take again." By the 4th day, the team's nerves frayed. 2 men disappeared after walking near the pit, leaving only scattered tools behind. A sudden storm rose without warning, trees bent in unnatural arcs, thunder rolling without clear source. Whitaker ordered the team to retreat, but Elijah insisted on one last inspection. He approached the well alone. Leaning over, he saw them, dozens of pale, eyeless faces rising slowly from the depths, their hands stretched outward, fingers curling like roots. The hum rose to a deafening crescendo in his mind. He staggered back, heart racing. Whitaker grabbed his arm. "Get away from it!" The storm passed as quickly as it arrived. When dawn came, Blackwood Hollow was silent, still, and untouched, as if nothing had occurred. But in the soil, footprints remained, not theirs, but large, irregular impressions leading from the well into the forest, vanishing without a trace. The team left immediately, leaving a warning carved into a tree at the edge of the forest. Do not disturb. The hollow remembers. It does not forget. Elijah Moore returned to his journals decades later, recounting the hollow's pulse, the whispers, and the faces beneath the well. Scholars dismissed much as imagination, legend, or fevered minds. Yet fragments of Greer's journal, Whitaker's notes, and eyewitness accounts persisted, cryptic evidence of the hollow's memory and its reach across centuries. Even in the modern era, explorers, hikers, and researchers occasionally speak of the place, a dense forest in North Carolina where shadows linger too long, water runs black and still, and the earth hums at night. Those who linger too long report whispers, names carried on wind, footsteps from nowhere, and the terrible certainty that Blackwood Hollow is not merely land. It is a memory, and it waits. Part 6. Into the Hollow. By 1932, Blackwood Hollow had become legend among local historians and paranormal enthusiasts. Few dared approach it, and those who did returned pale, silent, or never at all. But a team of modern researchers, led by Dr. Amelia Crawford, a historian specializing in colonial America, and accompanied by her assistant, Thomas Green, set out to uncover the truth. Their equipment was advanced for the time: cameras, metal detectors, surveying tools, and notebooks. They approached the hollow cautiously, guided by old maps from Whitaker's expedition and fragments of Greer's journals preserved in private collections. The forest greeted them like a living entity. Trees stretched impossibly tall, roots tangled across the ground, and moss hung like curtains from every branch. Even in broad daylight, the hollow felt dark, oppressive, and aware. The well still stood at the center of the clearing, black water reflecting the overcast sky. Crawford knelt beside it, measuring its depth. No sediment, no debris, yet it's unnaturally still, she observed. Green shivered. It feels wrong, like the air itself is watching. That night, they camped at the edge of the clearing. Crawford reviewed notes from Whitaker and Moore. Both accounts described the same phenomenon: strange hums from below, eyeless pale figures, and the well acting as a conduit. By midnight, the hollow stirred, not with wind or animals, but with sound, a low vibration through the ground. Footsteps echoed softly in the distance, then stopped. The well's surface rippled without cause. Crawford held her flashlight toward it. Shadows flickered beneath the water, forming shapes resembling human faces, pale, unfinished, and yet unmistakably alive. They spent days surveying the area, digging near the foundations of the old cabins. The soil was soft, almost spongy, and emitted a faint metallic odor. Roots wrapped around stones and charred wood, seemingly resisting intrusion. Every strike of the shovel felt as though the earth itself was pushing back. Crawford discovered fragments of journals and charred wood beneath one foundation. Most were illegible, but she found a small, water-damaged fragment of Greer's writing. The hollow remembers. It calls in names. It does not forget those who trespass. That evening, Green reported hearing whispers, words he could not understand, yet somehow urgent. They are talking to me, calling my name. Crawford tried to dismiss it, attributing it to wind or imagination. Yet she felt it too, a pressure in her chest, as if the forest's memory pressed down on her. On the fourth night, a storm arose, suddenly, without warning. Thunder cracked in unnatural patterns. The clouds swirled red and black, as if alive. Lightning illuminated the hollow in brief flashes. Crawford and Green saw them, dozens of pale figures moving just beyond the firelight. Their faces were smooth, eyeless, and their bodies elongated unnaturally. The hum from the ground rose to a deafening pitch. The well water began to bubble and ripple. Then came the tapping. Slow, deliberate, 3 beats, over and over. Green stumbled backward. We need to leave, now. But as they turned to flee, the forest shifted. Paths they had walked days before now led in circles. Trees bent subtly, guiding them back toward the clearing. The hollow would not let them leave. By dawn, the 2 historians were exhausted. Their notes were scattered, and their equipment malfunctioned inexplicably. Cameras jammed, compasses spun, radios emitted static that sounded eerily like whispers. Crawford noted in her journal, "The hollow is not merely a place. It is a consciousness built from all who vanished here and in other colonies. Roanoke, Jamestown, Blackwood Hollow itself. It remembers, it collects, and it waits. It will not allow us to leave untouched." As they prepared to retreat, Green disappeared. Crawford searched frantically, calling his name. Only his journal remained open on a rock. Its last entry was smeared in ash. "I saw them rise from below. They know our names. They will not let us leave." Crawford fled alone, her notes clutched tightly. She emerged from the forest hours later, disoriented, and swore never to return. In the decades that followed, Blackwood Hollow remained largely untouched. Hikers reported hearing faint whispers, footsteps, and tapping from the well. Surveyors attempting to map the area encountered sudden storms and disorienting paths, forcing retreats. Local legends grew of a forest that remembers, of settlements swallowed, and of the hollow that waits patiently beneath the trees. Crawford's journals, preserved in a university archive, detail her encounter. The figures, the well, the whispers, and the oppressive memory of centuries of vanished settlers. Even now, Blackwood Hollow stands. The well remains, black and silent by day, pulsing faintly at night. Some say if you linger too long, you hear your own name whispered from the depths. And sometimes, in the deepest hours, 3 slow knocks echo through the clearing. Deliberate, patient, and end never. The hollow does not forget, it does not forgive, and it waits.